After you finish listening to the story, don't forget to leave a comment about what you would have done in the character's place. Now, let's dive into the story. It was the night before Christmas Eve, and Brock was packing his suitcase for a business trip. He had been invited to a prestigious holiday retreat for top financial consultants, an event he couldn't afford to miss. The retreat promised networking opportunities, personal growth seminars, and exclusive events that would help elevate his career even further. His bosses had made it clear how important it was, and Brock was eager to impress. Ashley, on the other hand, didn't share his enthusiasm. As Brock loaded his suitcase into the trunk of his car, she leaned against the doorframe of the living room, watching him with a look of resignation in her eyes. "Are you really leaving tomorrow?" she asked, her voice a mix of irritation and something else, something Brock couldn't quite place. "Yeah, it's a big deal." "You know that," Brock said, glancing over at her as he zipped up the suitcase. Ashley forced a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Of course. I get it. Your career is more important than spending the holidays together," she muttered. Brock paused, feeling the sting of her words but brushing it off. "You'll be fine. You know how much I love you. I'll make it up to you when I get back." Ashley nodded stiffly, masking her hurt. In truth, she wasn't sure if Brock even noticed how much she was struggling. He hadn't for a while. The past few months had been a blur of missed opportunities, ignored calls, and distant conversations. She had tried to express how she felt, but the more she spoke, the less he seemed to listen. "Sure, Brock. Have a great time. Don't worry about me," she said, her voice tight. With a sigh, Brock turned to leave. "I love you, Ash. We'll talk when I get back." As he walked out the door, Ashley stood motionless, watching him drive away. She felt the familiar emptiness in her chest. The loneliness that had taken root long ago, but which now seemed impossible to shake off. Once Brock was gone, Ashley allowed herself to relax, shedding the facade she had kept up all day. She made a quick call to her friend, Vanessa, an older woman who had always warned Ashley about the dangers of feeling trapped in a relationship. "Vanessa is gone," Ashley said as soon as Vanessa picked up. "Perfect. So, now you can enjoy yourself," Vanessa replied with a knowing tone. Ashley hesitated for a moment, glancing around the empty apartment. "I don't know. I've been thinking. Maybe I need something more." Vanessa chuckled. "Something more? You're telling me that after all these years, you're still waiting for Brock to give you what you need?" Ashley bit her lip. "It's not like that. But he's so focused on his career, I feel invisible sometimes." "Well, sweetheart," Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone, "I have a friend who might be able to help with that. He's at this holiday party tonight. Maybe you can stop by and see if he can help you feel seen." A chill ran through Ashley's spine, but the desire for validation took over. She needed to feel alive again, needed to feel like she mattered, like someone else saw her as desirable. She agreed to meet Vanessa's friend. The upscale loft was filled with laughter, soft music, and the clinking of glasses. Ashley walked into the room, her eyes scanning the crowd. She wore a tight-fitting red dress that accentuated her figure and caught the eye of nearly every man in the room. The atmosphere was lively and festive, but Ashley felt the familiar rush of nervous excitement. She hadn't been to a party like this in ages. As soon as she stepped inside, Vanessa introduced her to Dylan, a suave, charismatic man in his late 30s who had an air of wealth and mystery about him. He had a certain charm that immediately pulled her in, and before long, they were deep in conversation. "You know, Ashley," Dylan said, his voice low, "you have that glow about you. I can tell you've been working hard, but sometimes you just need to let go." Ashley smiled, her pulse quickening. She hadn't heard such words in a long time, and it felt like a lifeline. "I guess I've been working a little too hard," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's just Brock, he's always so busy." Dylan's eyes glinted with interest. "Well, some men don't know how to appreciate what they have. But you're different. You're special." For a moment, Ashley felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in ages. Dylan was giving her the attention she craved, and she found herself leaning in closer to him, her insecurities melting away. As the night wore on, Ashley found herself alone with Dylan in a dimly lit corner of the loft. The music pulsed in the background, and she could feel the heat of his body close to hers. There was a part of her that was screaming to stop, to leave before things went too far. But the pull was too strong. She hadn't felt this alive in so long. Just as Dylan leaned in closer, about to kiss her, Ashley froze. She suddenly remembered Brock's face, his love for her, the life they had built together. She pulled back, her heart racing. "I can't," she whispered, her breath shaky. "I'm married." Dylan's smile faded, but he didn't press further. "I understand. But think about it, Ashley. You deserve to feel alive. You deserve someone who sees you for who you truly are." Ashley stood up, her legs weak beneath her. She knew what she had to do, but the temptation was still there, lingering in the air. As she stepped out into the cold night air, Ashley's mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. She had come to the party seeking something, validation, excitement, a feeling of worth, but in the process, she had crossed a line. The guilt started to creep in. She wasn't sure if she could go back, but one thing was certain, nothing would be the same when Brock returned. This is the beginning of a story that will evolve further in Part 2, where the fallout from Ashley's choices begins to unfold. And where Brock's discovery of the truth will send them both down a path of reckoning, forcing them to confront not just their marriage, but their own insecurities, desires, and the complexities of their emotions. Brock arrived home early on New Year's Eve, the retreat having concluded sooner than expected. He had been looking forward to a quiet evening with Ashley to reconnect after the days apart. He imagined they would celebrate the holiday together, relishing each other's company after a long time away. But as he entered the apartment, something felt off. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Brock frowned as he set his suitcase down by the door. The Christmas decorations, which Ashley had promised to put up, were barely touched. The festive cheer was absent, and in its place, there was a sense of emptiness in the air. "Ashley," he called, his voice carrying through the apartment. There was no response. Brock walked into the living room and then toward the kitchen, where he found Ashley sitting at the counter with a glass of wine. Her eyes were distant, unfocused. When she noticed him, a faint smile crossed her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early." Brock didn't respond right away. He felt the weight of the silence between them. He had been gone for days, and yet there was a wall between them now, one that hadn't been there before. He wondered if it was just his imagination. "Ashley, what's going on?" Brock asked, his tone softer now, searching. Ashley took a sip from her wine glass, avoiding his gaze. "Nothing. Everything's fine." Brock's concern grew. He could feel the distance between them, as if the intimacy they once shared had been slowly eroded by unspoken words. "Are you sure? You don't seem like yourself." Ashley's lips tightened, and for a moment, it seemed as though she was struggling with something inside her. But then, as if making a decision, she put the glass down. "I'm just tired, Brock. It's been a long few weeks. I need some space." Brock took a step closer, his frustration mounting. "Space? We haven't spent any time together since I left. You haven't answered my calls or texts. We've barely spoken, Ashley. What is going on?" For the first time since he returned, Ashley's eyes met his. There was a flicker of something, guilt, shame, or perhaps the weight of a decision that had already been made. She opened her mouth to speak but stopped herself. "Brock," she started slowly, her voice breaking, "I made a mistake." Brock's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" Ashley took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "While you were gone, I made a choice that I can't undo. I met someone." Brock stood frozen, the words hanging in the air. His mind raced, trying to process what she had just said. "You did what?" Ashley's voice wavered, and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I met someone at a party, someone who made me feel alive again. Someone who listened to me, made me feel seen. I don't know how it happened, but it did. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Brock felt as though the floor had been pulled from beneath him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mind went back to the days he'd spent at the retreat, imagining how Ashley might be filling her time while he was away, but never once thinking it would be like this. I don't know what to say, Brock finally whispered, his voice barely audible. I trusted you, Ashley. I thought we were. I know, she interrupted softly, tears welling up in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I felt so alone. I needed something I didn't have here. But now I realize how wrong it was. You didn't deserve this. Brock stepped back, his mind reeling. He wasn't sure what to feel, anger, sadness, confusion. He had trusted her, believed in their relationship, but now everything felt like a lie. So what now? What do we do? Ashley's voice trembled as she spoke. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I regret it so much. But I don't expect you to forgive me. There was a long pause. Brock didn't know what to say either. His heart was torn between the love he still felt for her and the betrayal that stung too deeply to ignore. The next day, Brock decided he needed to get to the bottom of this. He couldn't leave things unresolved. He needed answers, not just from Ashley but also from the person who had come into their lives and taken her attention away. He confronted Ashley once again. I need to know who this person is, Brock demanded, his voice steady but filled with quiet fury. Who is he? Why him? Ashley hesitated, a guilty look crossing her face. She knew this was a crucial moment. Telling the truth might be the only way to start rebuilding, but she was scared of what it might do to their already fragile relationship. It was Dylan, she whispered. Brock froze, the name striking him like a slap in the face. Dylan. He remembered that name from the party she had attended. It had been the first time she'd mentioned him, and now it all made sense, the mystery, the attraction, the way Ashley had acted so distant upon her return. How long? Brock asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Just once, Ashley replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It was just that one night. I wasn't thinking. I didn't want to hurt you. Brock felt a sharp pain in his chest, like a knife twisting. He had always thought their relationship was rock solid. But now, everything felt fragile, a thin shell that could shatter with a single wrong move. So you just... I'm sorry, Ashley interrupted, her voice breaking. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could go back and tell you everything before it happened. But I was lost. I felt like you weren't here, like I wasn't enough. But now, I see how wrong it was. Brock felt the tears welling in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. I don't know if I can forgive you, Ashley. I don't know if I can trust you again. This changes everything. She reached out, but he stepped back, holding his hands up. No. I need time. The days that followed were filled with silence. Ashley did everything she could to try to mend what was broken, but Brock couldn't bring himself to face her fully. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. Then came New Year's Eve, the night that would define their future. Ashley had decided she couldn't let him walk away without one last effort. She had to prove that she was willing to fight for their relationship. But Brock had his own plans. As midnight approached, he sat alone on their balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. He could never forget what had happened, but was it worth throwing away everything they had worked for? Was there a chance for redemption? Suddenly, the door behind him opened, and Ashley stepped onto the balcony, her silhouette outlined by the soft glow of the apartment lights. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what else to say. But I love you, Brock. I never stopped. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. Brock didn't turn to face her immediately. He needed time, but he also needed her to understand that the road ahead would be long and filled with uncertainty. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. "I don't know if we can go back to what we were, Ashley. But I'm willing to try."